Hi, everyone. Usually the last speaker is like, I'll keep this brief, but I'm not going to. So if you need to reel me in, that's totally fine. I get a little excited talking about soybean. So I am really excited to be here. These are not my soybean trials, as Lindsay already mentioned. Mine are about, 4.5 miles away from here, but they are the first soybean trials done at the Dickinson Extension Center ever. So, which is provides valuable data because otherwise I only had data for Minot, Williston, Hettinger, and Carrington. So exactly this part of the state was, I wouldn't say ignored, but just not researched as thoroughly for soybean. So for example, I had no idea you guys had acidic soils. I'm over in the Red River Valley working hard on alkaline soils, and you guys have the exact opposite problem out here. So it's really important to collect data in every part of the state as possible, as long as people are willing to, help me out with that planting and harvesting. So that way I can make sure that everyone has the correct data that they need to grow soybean. So I didn't see any hands. Who currently grows soybean that is not a researcher? All right. Who is interested in growing soybean, but they're unsure because it's a new crop? Okay, well, I'm just going to sell soybeans to you anyway. So, come on, it's over $15 a bushel now. That's a good deal. And I would say one perk of the NDSU soybean breeding program versus that of private company, which I'm not trying to discredit them in any way, but we are able to put a lot of focus on region-specific needs. So one thing, well, first I want to say thank you to the North Dakota Soybean Council. Yeah. Because you guys are keeping my lights on. But in that same breath, I have to say, when the Soybean Council comes to me, which is essentially the same as North Dakota farmers coming to me and say, Carrie, you need to work on drought. I say, yeah, sure, no problem, right? You just work on the most difficult problem that there could possibly be in genetics. Why not? You have to be a little bit overly confident and optimistic in order to be a breeder. So the reason that the Soybean Council wanted me to start working on drought is exactly for Western North Dakota. I was going to play this game of what are your yields? And I was going to start off at 30 bushels an acre, and I already know what the answer is. So for Stark County, the average yield for soybean is 19.1 bushels per acre. The state average is 35 bushels per acre. We are the lowest yielding Midwest state, if you still consider us the Midwest, which I guess I do. But we have the highest amount of acre expansion in the Midwest in the past 10 years. I was just at the World Soybean Research Conference in Europe, and so they were giving a report on American soybean, and North Dakota was the talk of the town. Where's all the opportunity for soybean? In North Dakota. So even though our yields may be not 70 bushels per acre like in Illinois, they've also been working on soybeans since 1920. Okay, we've been working on soybeans since 1990. So I see this as our starting point, right? We will get, okay, it gives me a little bit of anxiety to say it, but we will get to at least 60 bushels. How about that? 70, 80, that would be great. But I have full faith that that NDSU breeding and private company breeding will figure out the solution. So now I can easily just come up with pipe dreams, and I'll give you some more details behind that. One thing that I know is a concern to every farmer, regardless if you're in North Dakota or if you're in Georgia, is your season length, right? We have a little bit more pressure here, right? You could even talk about late spring frost. Here, we've had late planting because of wet springs, right? Did you guys have delayed planting this year out here too? Yeah, I didn't even get the last of my soybean planted until June 8th, which, talk about anxiety, but it's okay. Last year it seemed to do all right. This year we have slow emergence. I don't really know what's up with that. And now I have to worry about my other end. Are we going to get that September 6th frost like we did a couple years ago? And, I've been here since 2020, so I guess I'm not allowed to call myself new anymore. There has not been a snow in early October since I've been here. 2019. Still, I'm just like, I know it's coming. So short of the long, I mean, if we all could get a soybean that matures by September 20th, we can get our combines out there September 30th, October 1st. I think we'd all be much happier about that. Well, don't worry, because at least one thing I can say with certainty is that the duration of my soybean career has been spent on soybean maturity. So first, we need to understand what are the genetics behind season length maturity in North Dakota, because we have a very unique system compared to the other Midwestern states. Also interesting to me, when I moved here, people are talking about heat units with soybean. No, I've literally never heard that mentioned before. So now I also have the question, does the environment play an influence on when beans are going to mature? Because that's information that we need to know to make sure that we are planting everything properly. Or, of course, as the geneticist, I just want to control everything and get rid of that environmental factor. So that way, you know, if you plant May 15th, it's going to be ready to harvest September 25th. So that's one thing I'm working on right now. I have a graduate student doing that. She actually won an award at that World Soybean Research Conference for this research. So I feel like that's in really trusted hands. We're going to get some good results, hopefully a publication about that this year. But obviously, as a breeder, besides knowing genetics, the biggest concern is yield. How does that affect yield? So let me give you a good example about how maturity completely can change management. The southern United States used to swear by 7s, 8s, 9s maturity groups. Then they realized, if we grow an indeterminate variety, which keeps putting on flowers even after the first flowering begins, they can then grow a maturity group 3 and have a shorter or similar season length, but still get the same yields. Okay, so what the idea is that the soybean grows in 2 stages. You have the vegetative stage and then the reproductive stage. The vegetative stage is just where the stem grows, right? You need nodes. That's where the pods go. But once it starts flowering, that stem growth can stop. The nodes can stop. That's called the determinate variety. We grow indeterminates here. But what's been found is that if you can control that vegetative stage to be shorter and then have a longer reproductive stage, that can increase yields. So what do we have going on in North Dakota? I don't know. No one's on the research yet. So that's one of my biggest goals is I think the way to get that short season but maximize yield is going to be understanding this vegetative to reproductive ratio. Next, of course, better germplasm, right? Just get higher yielding lines. That I'm also working on by taking high yielding lines from maturity group 2, Illinois, maturity group 3, Nebraska, and Missouri, and then combining it with the NDSU lines. I'll spare you. I could complain about the large populations I have to grow and all the selections, but I won't do that. Let's just say we're going to have some exciting new genetics coming to NDSU lines very soon. I've also figured out a way so you can be clever with our position in the world. So you grow soybean in the winter closer to the equator, it's going to speed up and you're going to be able to get multiple generations or multiple cycles in Costa Rica in our American winter, which means that I can essentially grow more stuff and then advance it all in the winter nursery and then have it ready just to be tested in North Dakota for yield. So that's something exciting, some change that's been happening in the past year. Now, we already talked about it. Kochia, right? Kochia. Glufosinate seems to be a great option. Well, Liberty Link happens to be coming off patent, so that's also like a whole convoluted conversation. Liberty has multiple events that have been patented. The first event isn't stable and I think has a negative yield association. So the heavily commercialized trait is the second event called LL55. And it took us quite a long time to read through all the patent paperwork, but we figured out that it's going off patent either the end of this year or beginning of 2024. So we at NDSU are working pretty hard to get that to be part of the NDSU soybean breeding program. So these are glyphosate tolerant plants, which the same as glyphosate tolerance in other Midwestern states has a short shelf life, right? You have resistant water hemp, Palmer amaranth, and kochia. You can't use glyphosate on. So it's just time to start adding more tools to our soybean toolbox, and we all know that herbicide traits are what are necessary. Let me see. What else did I want to talk about? Drought. So currently in Williston, and we will expand to other sites, especially Minot, Hettinger, and hopefully Dickinson, we are working on finding new methodologies to help the plants overcome low water. So what's also tricky about it is you can have low water during the vegetative stage. The plant can overcome that. You can have low water during the pod fill stage. Can the plant overcome that? That's a question right there. But that is a really important question for this part of the state because that's when you start losing your rain. So I would love to say I'm going to solve the drought problem and probably win a Nobel Prize and make NDSU really proud. So that's my aspiration. But for right now, we're collecting preliminary data, so that's where we'll start. But we do have these trials going on in North Dakota, and fortunately, we're piggybacking off of some validated research from the South, because this is like problems that they've been dealing with for decades now. So I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I can see, okay, well, in Arkansas, they found some things that worked in their low water situation, so why don't we just try it up here up north? So that will be really exciting. I hope to start seeing some field trials of those newly bred NDSU varieties with this. The trait itself is pretty interesting. It is able to sustain the symbiotic relationship between rhizobium and low water conditions. So the idea is if you can have rhizobium still producing nitrogen in low water condition, it has been found, at least in Arkansas, that you can retain yields by 85%. That's a deal, right? And it won't cost you anything. It's just in the plant. So I'm cautiously optimistic about that. What else? I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, well, I'll leave it at that because I feel like I gave you guys a lot of information. Yes, 5 minutes. See, I knew I could do it. Does anybody have any questions about soybean, especially in Western North Dakota? I'm here, right? Look at this beautiful this is ND 17009 GT available for sale. Just go to the North Dakota Crop Improvement website and you can find a dealer near you. Yes.
So you mentioned that, like, in soybean plants that keep up that relationship with rhizobia in dry conditions, they are seeing 85% of yield. Are they just missing the nitrate at that point, or what about that relationship is sustaining yield during that time?
Yeah, so that would be the question for the microbiologist who's working on this one. I'm the breeder, right? So I'm like, oh, yield. I don't care what that black box is. But Barney Gaddis is part of this project too, so he's the one who's going to be able to answer that question for you. Also, I'm curious to know if it depends on the stage of growth, right? Like if they found that to be true during the vegetative stage, that's not going to be as helpful during the reproductive or pod fill stage. So, to be determined. Yes.
Yeah, my question is, so, Western North Dakota is well familiar with drought. In small grains and most crops I've observed, when it's hot and dry, it pushes that plant to go through its growth stage faster. But most soybean is also highly photoperiod sensitive and doesn't start flowering until after June 20 or 21, whatever the summer solstice is. So what are your thoughts as a breeder on what if we have another 2020, 2021, 2022, where it's just freaking dry from May through September?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. That's what I'm trying to breed for. So I don't actually call it drought. I call it low water conditions. Can we make a low water soybean variety? So from what I've been told, which I probably should validate myself, that Williston gets on average 3 inches of rain a year. You were there. Is that about right? Yeah, that's not just summer though, right? That's winter as well.
Yeah, that's annual, but the growing season water, I would call it more in the 3 to 6 neighborhood.
Yeah,
But
so
that's a variability of 100%.
yeah, right. But still 3 to 6, 10% of nothing is still nothing. So, so 3 to 6 inches is extremely minimal water. And so that is like the overarching goal, is to make a soybean variety that can survive low water conditions. It's a very lofty goal, but
So what's your pitch as a breeder to get me to grow soybean if it does better in dry conditions?
well, we're at $15 a bushel. How does that compare economically? I mean, how does the crop insurance look different? I think it's how much are your inputs?
So talk about farming for return.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different factors. I'm obviously going to say grow soybean because it's a pretty low maintenance crop, especially. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. Dicamba drift. That's what I wanted to talk about. I'll just also simplify that one for you. Missouri has done some really excellent work to find some natural dicamba tolerance. You won't be able to actually spray dicamba on the beans in order to control weeds, but it can, it is tolerant to a certain concentration of drift, so you won't see that ugly cupping, which I don't know if dicamba beans are popular out here, but if they are out here, then that is a concern. So, I mean, in a perfect world, I'm thinking a low water tolerance soybean plant that has dicamba tolerance, not resistance, but tolerance, with glufosinate resistance. That's what I'm thinking. How would you guys buy that? I don't set the price though, so I don't know how much it would cost. Yeah, I don't set the price. Yeah, but I mean, that kind of product doesn't exist on the market yet, so that's what I'm aspiring to. Yes.
I'm curious about, because one of the things we're going to deal with, granted, I don't know, I got to be careful generalizing to Western North Dakota, but is both flooding and drought.
Yeah.
Precipitation. But some of the mechanisms that help with drought resistance or resilience, I guess, can be similar to flooding.
So that one is the flooding tolerance is obviously afflicts the state too. We're still pending funding, but I will hopefully be joining a regional checkoff group called the North Central Soybean Research Program. They fund a flooding and drought tolerance program, and they have agreed to at least put my name on the proposal. So I mean, it's a long-standing project. It's one of those proposals where it's like you get the yes before you actually get the official yes. So that is something that I will start working on.
Out of Ohio.
No, that's out of Missouri. But the nice thing about working these big projects like that is that it comes with the resources. So Missouri has already developed some flooding tolerance genes, and essentially what I need to do is just breed it into the NDSU and then test it and pick my favorite spot in the Red River Valley, right? So yeah, I mean, a lot of interesting new things. The soybean research community is small and friendly and very collaborative. I'm extremely lucky to be in this position. Besides Missouri, there's only one public soybean breeder for soybean producing state. So someone counted, there's only 12 of us. But we're all buddies. We all work together. Most of my mentors. So, that means someone in Tennessee, someone in Arkansas, someone in Georgia figure something out. They are more than happy to send it our way, as long as I ask nicely. Yes.
A little bit outside of breeding, but in the contest.
Okay.
The seeding rate changes in dry conditions for soybean, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Hans Kandel recently retired, Hans, and so he sent me a final email saying, you got to plant 7-inch row spacing. You got to get 240,000 plants per acre. And but where I learned, it was 30-inch row spacing. So I think it comes subjective. If you only got a grain drill, then plant your 7-inch, 14-inch rows. So I don't have an answer for that specifically for low water conditions, but that was one thing that Hans always preached: 7 to 14-inch row spacing. Oh, thank you.